Settle down, brother. This is the Quarter Report, powered by INSA.com. South Africa is a movie. Welcome to the watch party. In January of 2024, last year, South Africa took Israel to the International Court of Justice on behalf of Gazans, Palestinians in Gaza, arguing that Israel was creating the conditions for an impending genocide and pleading the International Court of Justice to stop them. In March of 2024, last year, the ICJ ordered Israel to allow for critical food supplies to enter Gaza because of an impending famine and starvation. And now, over 1 million Gazans are suffering starvation. Children and able-bodied adults are dying of hunger, and Israel is still not allowing aid, supplies, what is needed. Israel, who have spent the last nearly 2 years destroying food manufacturing hubs in Gaza, destroying water supplies, destroying bakeries and butcheries, destroying farmland, destroying the lives of people and their homes who make food and can have food. Israel, who still insists on a blockade of the ocean around Gaza that is stopping aid from getting in. Israel that is only allowing dangerous food drops from helicopters into the Gaza Strip, those food drops that often end up hurting people and killing people when they land on the ground. Israel that is not allowing food to get in to the largest camp enforcing starvation and plague and disease of modern humanity. South Africa was right about Israel over a year ago. The ICJ agreed that South Africa was right about Israel over a year ago. And on the 24th of May last year, again, over a year ago, by a vote of 13-2, the court issued an order telling Israel to stop their assault on specifically Rafah in the Gaza Strip and to stop creating conditions in which a genocide could happen. Israel did not stop. The international friends of Israel in the West explained away the decision, tried to cast South Africa as being anti-Semitic for trying to stop the Israelis from exercising a genocide over millions of innocent people in Gaza. South Africa has now suffered penalties and is about to suffer sanctions and other punishments from the West, who now finally cannot deny the evidence before their eyes of starving children in the Gaza Strip. Even publications that for so long have fudged the truth about what is going on in Gaza, like the New York Times, even the British political leadership who resented and said that they regretted South Africa's court case to stop genocidal conditions in Gaza, are now saying, oh yeah, about that, we can't even deny anymore the truth that is plainly before our eyes. Israel is now trying to explain away certain famous cases of children dying of starvation, like one that they did in the last 24 hours, saying, no, actually, this one young Gazan, one young Palestinian child, didn't die of starvation. They died because they didn't have their medical supplies. Who's cut off their medical supplies? Israel? Because I promise you it's not the Palestinians. I promise you it's not the people of Gaza. I promise you it's not them. And along with not having enough medical supplies, you know the other thing that hastens death? Starvation, hunger, disease around the collapse of reliable water, disease around the collapse of reliable healthcare services, the specific targeting and destroying of hospitals, the fact that the very brave Palestinian doctors and nurses still working in those hospitals sometimes now can't work as much as they used to because they themselves are starving. They don't have the energy required. South Africa was right about Israel. South Africa was right over a year ago about Israel. We knew what was coming. The ICJ knew what was coming. The ICJ ordered Israel to stop what was coming. And since then, South Africa has suffered punishment and attempts to explain away all of the incredible legal work done by our legal team as anti-Semitic, when that is so clearly and obviously not the case. It was trying to stop a political movement called Zionism, which is not the same as Judaism. It's not the same as the religious beliefs that Jews have or the cultural beliefs that Jews have. It's not the same. It's a political project that tries to claim that Israel has ultimate control over and deserves and was given the land around Jerusalem in the Middle East. It's not the same. South Africa was mischaracterized and it had our name dragged through the mud. And we all South Africans have suffered consequences of the political punishments from major nations on our country. It's not just our political leaders who've suffered them. And we were right. We were absolutely right. And you know, it's funny because this was supposed to be an intro. If you watch or listen to the show, you know I start with an intro. And then I tell you that the show is powered by ICJ.com and you can watch the full thing at the link in the description at ICJ.com if you're watching on YouTube. And then I tell you to go and buy merch at www.3bnewsnetwork.com. Also a link in the description of the YouTube. This was supposed to be an intro. But once I started, how was I going to stop? And now I'm stopping artificially. This is all just come out of me instantly. This is off the top of my head. And we're going to get to the WhatsApp line, which is usually the thing that we do after that. We're going to get to a little bit maybe of the latest story of Paul Mashatile, because there's new reporting today that his sons were involved in a tender procurement that is dodgy and worth millions of rands. We were gonna talk about how another relative of his has got the lottery tender somehow. But today, as a human, none of that matters. Because by comparison, today is about how South Africa was right. We told you. We told you. The ICJ agreed with us. The ICJ's judges are appointed by a variety of countries. There was an American judge who agreed with us. The only two judges who disagreed with South Africa's appraisal were, one, the judge put forward by the Israelis, because in the ICJ, if your country is on trial, you get to put forward a judge. So they disagreed. And the only other one, a deeply compromised Ugandan judge who seems to have benefited extraordinarily from financing from Christian nationalist bodies in America that fund people to champion Christian nationalism and Christian Zionism. Every other judge agreed. And just bringing it right back to South Africa, you know what's so appalling also about this is that a year later, a year after that ICJ ruling, a year further into the mass starvation and destruction of Palestine, of Gazans, of Gazan lives, of millions of people who are lucky to still be alive when so many tens of thousands are dead, and Israel's been able to get away with that because of Western funding, Western weapons, Western political defense, Western denying any consequences for what Israel has done. You know what's so disgusting? Is a year after that ruling, the South African members of parliament from the DA, the Patriotic Alliance, who took a free trip to Israel on the dime of an organization called Friends of Israel, who buys off politically powerful people by taking them to Israel, showing them their side of Israel, and then getting them to agree that there's no apartheid, that there's no Israeli apartheid, that there's no genocide in Palestine, despite the fact that we all know that there is. And you know what's so galling is that a number of these MPs, and I'm going to read every single one of their names, and you should remember, I will never forget nor forgive any single one of these names. Some of these MPs are incredibly loud. They talk about everything. Liam Jacobs, he is an oversharer of note who talks about everything on the planet. You know what he's not spoken about? How he was flown to Israel and put in a program that concluded that Israel was doing nothing wrong to Palestinians. This was before he left the DA, but he was at the DA at the time. Oh, okay. Also the African Christian Democratic Party, I'm not forgetting them. So here are the names. Glynis Breitenbach, Emma Powell, who's just mysteriously resigned from her position commenting on international relations on behalf of the DA with no real explanation, saying, oh, my life is so hard and people were so mean to me. Who else? Catherine Christie, Bridget Masango, Nicholas Myberg, Liam Jacobs, then of the DA, and Bonginkosi Madikizela, all DA MPs. Patriotic Alliance, Ashley Sauls, Millicent Matopa, and then Steve Swart from the African Christian Democratic Party. The DA has loudly and consistently refused to pass judgment on what's happening in the Middle East, despite the fact that they so quickly passed judgment over Russia and Ukraine that John Steenhuisen went to Ukraine for a glorified photo op masquerading, cosplaying as a world leader. The PA have explicitly been Zionist and pro-Israel. Gates and McKenzie tried to quote Bible verses to make it look like that's actually the same Israel as this country now and this Zionist project. Ashley Sauls went on Facebook to tell us about this trip that he's done to Israel. They went on this trip a year after the ICJ's findings. We have been witnessing the killing, the maiming, and the destruction of Palestinians and their lives for way longer than a year. And they went to Israel on a fact-finding mission that none of them will talk about in public. None of them will defend themselves. And according to the organization that took them, quote, they will now testify to the media that, quote, no evidence of apartheid, and to the contrary, Israel is a vibrant, progressive, multiracial, and multi-ethnic society in which the rights of all citizens are protected and upheld by rule of law. Quote from the organization. And if you're watching, go look at the picture that we're showing right now of all of these people looking very chuffed with themselves. One of them has put on red makeup and is wearing a Karl Lagerfeld belt. It is completely reprehensible. And I know that what's going to happen now is people are going to try and cast what I've just said as anti-Semitic. I know that they're going to do that. I know people are going to say, oh, Dan is just bashing anybody who's not the ANC. And I've already accepted that people are going to do that because those people don't care about what people like me actually say. They don't care about the facts. People who say that I'm just bashing all of these politicians because I'm taking the ANC line and they are not ANC politicians will willfully ignore the coverage that I've done extensively on the ANC's failings, the things we cannot forgive them for, on Ramaphosa, on Mashatile, on Mchunu, on Zuma, on Mbeki, on our entire history, modern history with the ANC. They will ignore all of that. They will also ignore the fact that I have consistently, fairly reported on what is going on. And I have not said a single thing against Jewish people, not one thing, because I am not anti-Semitic. I am anti the Zionist project that has created apartheid in Palestine and is now enabling the genocide of millions of people. So clearly so that even Trump is acknowledging starvation in Gaza and telling Israel that they need to stop. That even Keir Starmer, the leader of the Labour Party in Britain and their prime minister, even he has had to acknowledge what is going on. He, a few years ago, said that Israel has the right to cut off water from Palestine. It's within their right, he said, on a public radio platform. And by the way, for Keir Starmer, I'm revolted by what you have done. Because Keir Starmer came out and told Israel that he will recognize Palestine as a state in September if Israel does not cease fire and pull out of Gaza. What do you mean you're making it conditional? You scum. You actual scum. You say you'll only recognize Palestine as a state if they continue to be brutalized? You say that you won't recognize Palestine as a state if Israel finally stops the horrors that they've been committing. How dare you? How low and amoral and inhumane of you. How dare you say that? On the one hand, I am so happy that the world is finally waking up. No, not that the world is waking up, that the leaders of the West, the Western media, bought off Western media and bought off Western politicians, can no longer deny the realities of what is happening. I'm so happy that countries like France say that they're going to finally recognize Palestinian statehood, as they should have done ever since before Israel existed, when Palestine was a British mandate. But on the other hand, my heart will never heal from how much evil, how many horrors had to be committed against millions of innocent people in Palestine. People like to say women and children, also men, also adults. I know it's easier to empathize in a less complicated way with women and children, but I'm so devastated and my heart will never heal from the level of evil and the scale of it that has had to be perpetrated against millions of people for the Western hegemonic powers to not be able to deny anymore what is being done to Palestinians. The cost, the actual cost, the actual suffering and death that was required for the West to no longer be able to deny what is happening and to consider giving Palestinians statehood. That shows a level of immorality and evil and emotional darkness that is hard for me to handle. Deeply hard to handle. I don't even know how long I've been speaking for. How long have I been speaking for? Only 17 minutes. That's way less than I thought.
What I felt particularly brutally in the last over a year is the fact that we as South Africa have seen this before, where, listen, a lot of things led to the fall of apartheid, but one of the biggest things was Thatcher and Reagan pulling out and not sanctioning and not supporting the apartheid government anymore. It's the same thing. When we get to the point where the international court's designed to stop this kind of thing, and human rights organizations and the UN all coming out and saying that this is wrong, and they have no impact on whether it happens or not, is insane. And the fact that we are back again relying on the empathy of two people, essentially. Yep. It's Trump and Keir Starmer. Yep. Trump is morally bankrupt.
It's not the only way he's bankrupt. That's the first joke I've made on this show today.
Keir Starmer is...
Yo.
I thought I'd misunderstood what he had said.
And you know,
the fact that it was a conditional acknowledgement to Palestine is
only if the horrors continue. If they don't continue, no statehood.
And the fact that we're relying on those two feeble men is terrifying to me.
Earlier this week, two organizations in Israel, one of them of Israeli physicians, came out and called for the heaviest possible sanctions against Israel, their own country, for the genocide that they clearly saw Israel was committing on Palestinians. That's what they did. A day later, 30 or 31 prominent public figures who are now in danger of legal consequences because the Israeli government does arrest and does silence dissent, condemned what the Israeli government is doing. If we have got to that point, what more do you need